So this is perhaps the worst how-to video you're ever going to see, and I'm not going to actually try to show you how to do everything, but just give you some hints along the way that you might find useful. The job is about replacing the clips that hold the outer cables for the heater controls. And I've got a spare heater control panel here, and you can see on the back of the heater control panel, these are the quadrants with the hook for the inner cable, and there's the bridge that the outer cable clamp goes onto, and as you can see they can break off. That's more or less how an intact one would look, except that's also slightly broken, and the clips in there and goes over there over the top of the cable, outer cable, to hold it in place. See, this one's on the verge of letting go, but it is just about intact, and that one has gone completely. Where has it gone? Over here. It's just missing completely. So there's a replacement to replace this plastic panel here, this piece, with metal from Satisfied Incorporated. Excellent solution. It involves getting this panel out and taking all this stuff off, which I'll come to in a second. But in order to get this panel out, you need to take the under dash panel off, and as you can see, the reason for that is that's got these grooves here that clip around the side of the panel there. So this bit is wedged into there, which means this panel underneath the cluster has to come off, and there's a screw in about the back of there that holds the under panel cluster on, and there's a screw up here that holds it in place. But to get access to that retaining nut there, you need to take the instrument panel out. To get the instrument panel out, you need to undo the under dash panel, which is just held on with a couple of screws. And then I've got an instrument cluster here. You can see on the back of the instrument cluster there's a stud, a screwed stud here. So you reach under the panel, under the dash. When you're taking the under dash panel out, you can reach under here, undo that screwed nut, and then the instrument cluster will pull out. You really do need to pull it all the way out. I haven't disconnected the speedo cable because my under dash panel already had cracks in it, and once the instrument cluster, which traps it in with this bezel here, see there's a chamfered edge on there which the instrument cluster traps this panel in place. Once I move the instrument cluster out, bits of the under dash panel just fell off, so I didn't need to worry too much about it. This bit's still held on because the nut's in on the other side. But ideally you take this out. But to get the instrument panel even to come this far forward, the steering wheel has to come off. I've got a sport steering wheel. The retaining nut's in the bottom of there, and there's the horn pull. Which you just pulls out of the centre of there. You have to just pry it out gently bit by bit. Don't take the emblem off. Mine's a JPS emblem because it's a John Player Special Edition. You'd normally have a BMW emblem on there. Held on with a nut with a washer. It's a, what size is that? 22mm nut. You pull the horn pull out under that. The steering column comes off. I would sort of suggest what you do is you get this panel here, this spoke, down at the 6 o'clock mark, take the key out of the ignition, and then the steering wheel will be locked in place. The steering column will be locked in place, so you'll know where to put it back on. You can take the under dash panel off, reach underneath, undo that nut, pull the instrument cluster forward. The speedometer cable is accessible. You have to, there it is at the back, oh, you can see it. There we go. you have to reach underneath to undo the speedometer cable, which I elected, well, I didn't do because I didn't need to do, and it's one less thing to try and put back on again. Then you can take the under dash panel off, under cluster panel, beg your pardon, off, and then there are 3 screws under here that hold it on, and 2 screws in behind these knobs. The knobs just pull off. The knobs are interchangeable, so that's fine. Don't take that one off, you don't need to. Under those 3 screws, this will then pull forward. You then have to tilt it over and up because there are 2 brackets sticking up behind here for the screws to go into, and you need to lift that's where the screw hole is there. There's a bracket which sits in behind there, and you need to lift this lot over it, so it actually helps to rotate these. That one, this one, you're going to rotate it. Which way around is it? You want to rotate it all the way up, which is all the way clockwise. That one all the way up, which is all the way anti-clockwise for temperature, all the way clockwise for distribution, and then lift those up out of the way, and that gives you a bit of clearance over those 2 brackets, which will go through there. Brackets will go through this, but you do have to lift them up and over those brackets a little bit. And then this pulls out, and these come out of these bits here come out of the vents in the back of the dashboard there. So it is a bit of a struggle. When you're pulling it out, you will almost certainly need to put a pry bar in, but make sure you put the pry bar in behind this edge here, as far behind it as you can get. Otherwise, that's what happens, you break the edges up. So you need to get a plastic trim bar in the back of here, and it will come forward gently but surely. Don't try too hard. And when you've got it out, you might want to clip this off because this can catch on the trim coming out. It is pretty tight fit. You almost don't need the screws. Once you've got it out, the hazard warning light goes through this hole, and you can unplug the connector off here. This one's missing a set of switches because this is not for a air conditioning car. You can take the plug off of there, and now you've got the panel will be probably held with the outer cables clipped into these holes, and that hole, and there's a hole in here for the air distribution, and there. The clamp for the air distribution lever is on the side here. This is where the clamp goes. This is where the broken clamp goes on that side. That's where that one is. You may have one or more of those clamps intact, and you may be able to get at them without any further ado, but best thing to do is to unclip the cables from the other ends, and then you can pull this panel further forward to detach these clips and detach these cables, and you probably have to do all 3 of them. I actually managed to do all the repairs to here and to here with this cable intact, but mainly because before I took it off, that bracket was already broken. It broke about 2 weeks before I decided to get round to doing the repair, which is probably good, because had I done the repair 3 or 4 weeks earlier, maybe this would have broken afterwards, although maybe it would have broken in the removal, I don't know. So I'll just briefly touch on how I fixed this one up. Because the repair was clean, I was able to glue the crack together, and I made a piece of metal which came across here, and over here, and I had to drill a hole because there's a clip that holds the cable in there through there, and that's a hole I drilled, but I couldn't get to drill one in practice in situ. But I glued that panel on there, the piece of metal on there, and I put a clamp over this side to go over the cable and the cable clamp, and a couple of bolts to hold it together, just to rigidize that joint, because I didn't trust the plastic. But that's a slightly different issue to what you're going to be faced with, just repairing the heat, the air distribution and temperature controls. Now, when you're Satisfied Incorporated have got an excellent video on how to take all this apart and actually put their plates on and what have you. That's fine. You will need to remove these quadrants to do it, and you'll need to push these shafts out, which come this other side, through these spring clips. If you're very careful, you can reuse those spring clips. I was able to. But when you put it all back together again, what Satisfied Inc don't mention is it's very important the orientation of this shaft and the quadrant on the back need to line up. So you need to work out from the shaft, turn the shaft all one way, and put the quadrant back on at the corresponding end. And before you push it in, make sure that it's going to go all the way from one end to the other. And it's very important that you get those lined up, because although this shaft is square, you can see there's a cutout there, and the knob's got a key on it, so the knob only fits in there in one position, and you've got these two little dents here. They act as stops, so you can't actually go round and round and round, because the thing on the back doesn't go round and round, and you need to get the shaft and the quadrant lined up to match each other both sides. Then when you come to put it all back together again, you will, if you've detached the cables at the other end, the far end, the end by the heater control valve and what have you, you can line this up at almost any position you like where the quadrant is, it doesn't matter. And you can put the outer cable in, but don't put very much outer cable sticking out, and fit the clips to hold the outer cable together with the inner cable clipped in here. And you'll probably need to do all that with it sort of hanging down here somewhere close to the dash, because you haven't got all that much room to move on. If you detach the cables, you can do all the work to put the plates on away from the car, but when you put it back together again, this is going to be up here somewhere pretty close in for the cables to reach. So you can put the inner cable into this hole there, and you can put a little bit of outer cable sticking out there and clamp that on, same on the other side. But then you need to line these quadrants up again, one end or the other, either all the way in or all the way out. I found all the way in like this to be the best position. Then you need to line the control at the other end up the same way. So if that's all the way down, then the control at the other end needs to have the cable all the way sticking out. So for the air distribution, I put it all the way down like that. That seemed to work better for me. For the temperature, I actually pulled it all the way up initially, and then moved it down before I made the connection in the engine bay. Now the connections at the other end of the cables are quite different. The one for the heater control valve is in the engine bay, which we'll get to in a second. But the other two are under here. And you can see there's a blue cable, which is for air distribution. There's a green cable, which is for the fresh air vent. And they go into a clip, which you're probably not going to be able to see under here, but I'll show you the clip in a second. It's just like it just clips into like a semicircle horseshoe, and then there's a cap that goes over it. But there's the heater distribution valve. So you need to put that into position one end or the other. The same with the fresh air vent. And we look in the engine bay, there's the control for the water valve, and there you can see the clip that it goes into. It's got the cap on, but it's just a U-shape clip. The outer cable will push into that, and then there's a cover cap that goes over the top of it to hold it all in place. And then you just reassemble everything. So we'll just go and look at what that clip looks like in a second. So this is the clip that holds the cable in at the valve end or the flap end. You can see there's a U-shaped section. The outer cable will just push into that U, and that actually has enough clamping force to hold the outer cable still. So while we had to have the spring fitting at the other end is a bit of an unknown to me. And then the cap just goes over it. Okay. So just to give you an idea of the problem, this is the spring clip that fits onto here. And you can see where the outer cable goes through, and then this just pushes over the edge there to clamp it all in place. So it actually provides a lot of clamping force, but it's a real fiddly design. And you can imagine, even if this hasn't broken, by the time you apply enough force on there to get this in place, chances are it will be broken. And that's this assembly here. This whole plate is the thing that's satisfied ink replace with some nice metal that's never going to break in a million years, which would have been a much better design had BMW either used that or used the clip they used for the other end of the cable. It was a bit of a mystery why they didn't. So hopefully that'll help you sort out replacing or repairing the heater control cables on an E21 BMW post facelift.